The air, thick with the cloying scent of funeral lilies and sorrow, still clung to my son's casket, the wreaths vibrant with life barely begun to wilt. In that hushed space, my daughter-in-law, Brianna, fixed me with an icy stare. "Tomorrow," she uttered, her voice a razor's edge, "you need to get out of this house. This isn't your place anymore." Relatives and guests, their faces blurring through my unshed tears, witnessed the cold declaration. I bit my lip till I tasted copper, swallowed the searing pain, and chose silence. I would not let Nathan's final farewell descend into a humiliating spectacle. He deserved peace, at least today. Later, at the will reading, Brianna's smirk slashed across her face. "Hope you enjoy being homeless," she sneered, "because you're not getting anything." The words hung in the air, a cruel counterpoint to the grieving silence, but in that stretched moment, as the lawyer reached for the sealed envelope, a colder force than grief seemed to stir, the slow, meticulous hand of karma. I am Genevieve Hartley, 68 years old, an American mother who has known more loss than any soul should bear. My husband, Robert, succumbed to lung cancer over a decade ago, leaving me and our only son, Nathan. His death carved the first permanent hollow in my heart, but nothing prepared me for this. After Robert passed, I'd sold our old house in the Dallas suburbs, pouring $40,000 into Nathan and Brianna's new home. "Mom," Nathan had said, his eyes warm with promise, "think of it as a boost. When you want a smaller place later, I'll help you." I trusted my son completely. The paperwork felt secondary to the bond we shared. Moving in with them, I tried to be invisible, a helpful shadow. I cooked, gardened, picked up my grandchild from school. I cleaned, covered small household expenses, believing these acts woven a stronger family fabric. Instead, Brianna began to unravel it, thread by careful thread, using my efforts as an excuse to subtly ostracize me. I became an outsider in the very home my sacrifice had helped build. Standing before Nathan's casket, my heart felt like shattered glass within my ribs. He was 46, gone too soon, too suddenly, a heart attack snatching him away, with so many dreams unfinished. I yearned to channel every ounce of strength into grieving him, into sending him off with the quiet dignity he deserved, surrounded by a family's embrace. Instead, Brianna's words cut deep, shattering any illusion that I still belonged, that I could rely on them in my old age. I remember every detail. As guests began to depart, the lingering scent of funeral flowers mingled with a strange chill. Used tissues, crumpled and damp with Brianna's theatrical tears, lay scattered on the coffee table. She dabbed her eyes artfully, always ensuring sympathetic eyes witnessed her performance. But the instant the last mourner turned away, her gaze hardened, a glacial gleam that sent shivers down my spine. I glanced at the wreath sent by Robert's relatives, their silent support a stark contrast to the venom she'd just spat. They would have been incandescent with rage had they heard her. But I remained silent, biting my lip until it bled, preserving Nathan's final day from the open warfare she craved. Upstairs, in the small room Nathan had once claimed, "Stay as long as you like, Mom. Treat it as your home." I collapsed onto the bed. Tears streamed down my face, yet a strange clarity settled within me. My trembling hand reached into the drawer, pulling out the small silver key Nathan had pressed into my palm only weeks before his death. "Keep this," he'd whispered, his eyes holding a depth I hadn't understood then. "Don't tell anyone. You'll understand later." I had wondered, but hadn't probed. Now, after Brianna's eviction notice, a cold certainty settled. This key, I realized, was my only hope. Sleep was an impossible luxury that night. I packed, each fold of a shirt a stark reminder of the countless loads of laundry I'd done for them, always without a thank you. Each glance at Nathan's beaming smile in a fading photograph tore a fresh wound. I cradled the remaining pictures, whispering to his memory, "Son, I won't let anyone tarnish what I've done for you, or the love I hold." Brianna offered no comfort, no help. At precisely 10 p.m., she appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, nails tapping an impatient rhythm on the frame. "Don't expect me to change my mind," she stated, her voice laced with contempt. "By 10 a.m. tomorrow, I want you gone. I've put up with you long enough." I met her gaze, offered no words, only a silent nod. In that moment, I saw a brazen contempt I'd never witnessed before, and in that same moment, a steel resolve ignited within me. I would never again allow anyone to trample my dignity. I left before dawn, the pre-morning quiet broken only by the hum of my car. 4 suitcases in the trunk, a single box on the back seat, and Nathan's silver key clutched in my coat pocket. The quiet neighborhood slept, unaware that the woman who had cared for so many of their children was now slipping away like a homeless stranger. I pulled into a roadside motel, the neon vacancy sign casting a lurid glow on the asphalt. The room was small, antiseptic, the sheets wrinkled, but I knew it was temporary. From my purse, I retrieved the small bundle Nathan had given me with the key. Inside, Attorney Harold Pierce's business card and a handwritten note. "Mom, if I'm gone one day, go see Mr. Harold. I've arranged everything." Tears came again, not solely from pain, but from the searing realization. My son had known. He had seen it all, and quietly, meticulously, laid a path for me to survive. Sitting by the window, watching the endless stream of headlights on the highway, a small, unyielding fire sparked in my chest. I was no longer a trembling mother waiting for the axe to fall. I held the key, and I knew with a certainty that calmed my churning grief, that the real game had just begun. The next morning, I returned to the funeral home. Nathan's service was a grand affair, a sea of white flowers, solemn hymns, hundreds of well-dressed mourners. Everyone praised Brianna's stoicism, seeing her as the picture of a grieving widow. I hovered at the edges, a faint shadow at my own son's farewell. Enlarged photos of Nathan adorned the walls: childhood, graduation, his wedding to Brianna, family vacations. But a cold knot formed in my stomach. Not a single recent picture with me. The treasured images I remembered from their living room, Nathan hugging me at his college graduation, us at Thanksgiving, were gone, replaced by happy family of 3 shots. Nathan, Brianna, our grandchild. It was as if I had been erased from his memory. Brianna entered, a vision in a long black dress, her makeup flawless beneath a mask of carefully constructed sorrow. Her sobs were loud, designed to carry. Whenever someone approached, she clung to them, weeping harder, making them believe grief consumed her. Outsiders saw devotion. I saw a performance. The memory of her cold stare the night before, her contempt as she expelled me, was too fresh. 2 images jarringly divergent. The public Brianna, the grieving wife, the private Brianna, ice-cold and ruthless. I moved through the receiving line, fulfilling my role as the bereaved mother, greeting Nathan's old friends, neighbors, colleagues from his architecture firm. "Life is so unfair," they murmured. "He was so young. You have to stay strong." I nodded, managed weak smiles, feeling like an understudy in a play where Brianna held center stage. Then, cutting through the hushed condolences, I heard it. Brianna's low whisper to her brother, Trent, barely audible behind a wall of white flowers. "The life insurance will cover the debt for 2 years. After that, I can manage." A short, sharp laugh. "And the old woman will get the hint. I'm not obligated to support anyone else." I froze. My hands trembled. My heart hammered like a trapped bird. In that agonizing moment, I felt like trash, something to be discarded. Amidst my son's funeral, with his coffin still unburied, Brianna was calculating finances, systematically excising me from her life. The mask had slipped, revealing the raw, ugly truth. I gripped my purse, a desperate attempt to still my shaking hands. Don't make a scene. Not here. Not now. Nathan deserved a dignified farewell, not his mother and wife tearing each other apart before an audience. I swallowed the lump in my throat, found an empty seat off to the side, and watched. Under the soft yellow lights of the funeral home, Brianna stepped forward, reading a remembrance in a voice trembling with carefully calibrated emotion. She spoke of a wonderful husband, of future plans cruelly cut short, of a pain that would never fade. Guests dabbed at their eyes, some praising her strength. I watched, a strange cocktail of pain, anger, and calm swirling within me. Calm because only I knew the truth of her performance. Calm because in my purse, Nathan's key rested. Tangible proof that he hadn't been as blind as everyone believed. The service concluded amidst whispers of "take care" and obligatory hugs. I caught pitying glances from Robert's relatives, their eyes reflecting the assumption that I was merely an old, lonely mother dependent on my daughter-in-law's charity. They didn't know she had just taken my home. I forced a brittle smile, offered my goodbyes, and quickly exited before the tears could betray me again. Across the hallway, I saw Brianna and Trent, whispering secrets, casting quick glances my way. When she saw me, Brianna performed her swift wipe of the eyes, leaning dramatically on her brother's shoulder. Trent patted her, then met my gaze with a knowing smirk. In that instant, it became clearer than glass. I was a cost, an obstacle to their newfound fortune. I stepped outside into the gloomy March air, pulling my coat tight, my fingers still wrapped around Nathan's key. The cold outside was nothing compared to the cold within me, but in that deepest sorrow, a flicker, a dangerous, exhilarating flicker of light ignited. The key in my pocket was a cold, metallic promise against my skin. Nathan hadn't abandoned me. Not like Brianna had, not in her venomous whispers echoing blade sharp in my mind. The insurance will cover the debt. The old woman will get the hint. That night, the sterile anonymity of the highway motel became my refuge. I sat on the worn bedspread, replaying her words, tears burning trails of humiliation down my cheeks. Not just sorrow for my son, but the raw sting of being despised before his grave was even settled. When the well of grief ran dry, I straightened my spine. My gaze met the foggy reflection in the mirror, a spectral image of defiance. "Son," I whispered, the words a vow. "I won't let them trample me. You wanted me strong, and strong I will be." My fingers touched the key, its chill seeping into my resolve. The counterattack I knew was a whisper away. And when it came, I would be anything but the weak old woman they envisioned. 2 days after the funeral, Brianna's name glowed on my phone screen, a beacon of inevitable trouble. I answered, the familiar false sweetness in her voice confirming my dread. "Genevieve, darling, could you come by the house? I have a few of Nathan's things, keepsakes, that I think you should have." Keepsakes. The word tightened my chest. I pictured Nathan's watch, the photo albums from his nightstand. Suspicion coiled in my gut, yet a desperate pull to claim any fragment of him, any memory, made me agree. This wouldn't be our last encounter. The house, when I arrived, hung heavy with the ghost of morning. White flowers drooped like forgotten dreams, the air thick with dampness and the stale perfume of extinguished candles. Once Nathan's vibrant home, it now felt like a cold, empty stage. Brianna opened the door, her face a mask of practiced indifference, no trace of tears. "Come in," she said, turning, her voice flat. Straight to the living room. I paused at the threshold, a ripple of unease, then followed. The oak table in the center of the room was stark, save for a stack of crisply printed papers and a pen. Not a single keepsake, not a single memory of Nathan. A cold dread seeped into my bones. This was no nostalgic retrieval. This was a trap. Brianna sat, her gesture sweeping towards the documents. This is an agreement. If you sign, there won't be any legal disputes over the house. I want things clear. The house is in Nathan's name, which means it's mine. You just need to confirm you're leaving voluntarily. No claims, no demands. That way everything stays smooth. I stared at the pages, the legal jargon cold and intricate, anger warred with the dull ache of betrayal. $40,000, my life savings, the sale of my own home, poured into this house, Nathan's house, our house. Now I was being treated as a stranger, told to sign away my rights. My voice, when it came, trembled. Brianna, I just lost my son. I haven't even gathered my thoughts. How can you ask me to sign this? Her gaze was devoid of sympathy. Because I don't want problems. I'm young. I need to move on. I can't keep dragging an old woman like you around my house. Nathan wouldn't want that either. Her words were a physical blow, twisting in the wound of my grief. But even as the pain lanced through me, an idea sparked, bright and dangerous. The mini voice recorder in my purse, the one I used for lectures, a gap beneath the table, just wide enough. I took a shaky breath, nodding. Fine, hand me the pen. My hand trembled, or so I made it seem, as I took it. My finger slipped, and I deliberately marred my signature, a faint but crucial imperfection. To Brianna, I was a defeated, panicking old woman. To myself, I was an architect of invalidation. Across from me, her face softened, a flicker of triumph in her eyes. See? This will make things easier for everyone. As she gathered the papers, basking in her perceived victory, I bent to retrieve a dropped handkerchief. In that swift movement, my fingers found the underside of the table, securing the tiny recorder, switching it to auto. Its discreet green light pulsed, a silent witness. My heart hammered, but my face remained a mask of weary compliance. All done. I'll go now, I murmured, my voice wobbling. Brianna offered a thin, mirthless smile, her arms crossed. Yes, you should go. I'm tired of supporting someone who can't do anything. She's a parasite and belongs on the street. I'm not a charity to carry extra weight. I turned away, feigning a hidden tear, but inside something ignited, a fierce, cold resolve. The recorder now held every cruel, damning word. It was my first piece of evidence, a treasure I would guard with my life. I stepped onto the porch, the late March wind whipping around me, gray sky mirroring my soul. Pulling my coat tight, I hurried to the car. The door slammed shut, sealing me inside, the exhale a long, shuddering release, as if I had just escaped a predator's lair. The drive back to the motel was a heavy silence, yet a new fire kindled within me. I had nothing left to lose, but I possessed something Brianna could never fathom. The truth. And that truth, like a taut cord, would bind her. Alone in the small room that night, the red neon vacancy sign casting spectral light through the thin curtains, I played the recording. Brianna's voice, chillingly clear, filled the silence. She's a parasite and belongs on the street. I listened 3 times, each replay deepening the sting of hurt, but sharpening my resolve. Nathan, I whispered to the empty room, did you hear that? Your wife's true face is showing, but I won't keep crying. I will stand up, and I will let the world know you were right to trust me. I locked the recorder away. This was only the beginning. The bleach-scented air of the motel, The single yellow bulb, the restless rumble of highway trucks all faded as I clutched my bag. Brianna's words, still a searing brand, had shifted from insult to cold confirmation of my expendability. Against the peeling wallpaper, I swore an oath. I lost my husband, my son. I will not lose my dignity. Nathan, my son, had seen it coming. The proof, a silver key, a note hidden in an envelope, my only path out of Brianna's cunning snare. Dawn bled through the cheap curtains, painting blurry stripes on the mildewed wall. Exhausted but strangely clear-headed, I washed my face with icy water, then made the bitter instant coffee. At the wobbly table, I took out Nathan's envelope. His familiar handwriting on the note made my fingers tremble. "Mom, please go see Mr. Harold Pierce." Below it, a phone number, a law office address. I traced the letters, a ghost of his touch. I sat for hours, a finger resting on the numbers, not yet dialing. I needed to calm the storm within, to gather myself. This call would be an irreversible step, a new chapter. I had to be ready, not a fragile, weeping mother, but a woman prepared to fight. In the late afternoon, an unknown number flashed. I answered, and a steady, low male voice introduced himself. "Hello, I'm Harold Pierce, the attorney handling Nathan Hartley's legal matters. First, please accept my condolences for your loss." My throat tightened, but I managed. "Thank you, Mr. Pierce. Nathan, my son, mentioned you. He trusted you." "Yes." Harold's voice softened, a steadying anchor. "Nathan worked with me for some time. Before he passed, he left certain documents and instructed me to contact you regarding an addendum to his will. Could you come to my office next Tuesday at 2 p.m.? "Yes, I'll be there. Thank you." I hung up, staring ahead. Fear fluttered, but hope soared higher. Nathan hadn't abandoned me. He had laid a path, meticulously planned, a path Brianna never suspected. The smoke-stained ceiling of the motel room suddenly felt brighter, as though Nathan's eyes were watching over me. That night, an old notebook became my confidant. "Nathan," I wrote, "today I got a call from Attorney Pierce. You prepared more for me than I ever imagined. I promise I won't let you down. I'll keep my dignity, and I'll let the world see you were right to believe in me." I folded the notebook, tucking it beneath my pillow as cars tore down the highway, their engines like racing heartbeats. The day of reckoning was close. 2 days later, my phone rang again. Brianna, her name a toxic bloom on the screen. I hesitated, then answered. Her voice, syrupy and strained, dripped into my ear. "Genevieve, darling, I just want to make sure you're not planning to make trouble for me. We're still family, right? I think you should let things be. Staying quiet is best for everyone. Otherwise, no one will believe you anyway." I drew a long, slow breath, holding back the rising tide of anger. "Brianna, I don't want drama. I only want Nathan to rest in peace. But remember this, I won't let anyone walk over me ever again." A short, mocking laugh crackled through the line. "And what do you think you can do? No one's on your side. People will just see a bitter old woman. You should disappear like you should have from the start." I closed my eyes, letting her acidic words wash over me, then quietly hung up. I found myself standing before the open drawer, the sleek recorder resting inside, a silent promise. It was my shield, discreet and lethal. The following days blurred into a tense hour-by-hour vigil. Each dawn, I pulled on my worn coat and walked to the convenience store near the motel. The aroma of brewing coffee a small comfort. I'd find my corner, sip the scalding liquid, and watch the sun creep across the floorboards. The tremor in my hands steadied, replaced by a cold, quiet certainty. Tuesday. By Tuesday, everything would be irrevocably changed. In those hushed mornings, Brianna haunted my thoughts. I pictured her, smug and scheming, perhaps even relieved. She believed she'd cornered me, forced my signature, but she didn't know the signature was invalid. She couldn't fathom that every cruel word, every venomous whisper had been meticulously recorded, and most importantly, she had no idea what Nathan had truly left for me. My fingers closed around the cool silver key in my palm, a nascent warmth spreading through me. A new game had begun, and this time I wouldn't be a pawn. The meeting with attorney Harold Pierce arrived with unsettling speed. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs the entire morning. I chose an old, respectable navy dress and a soft gray cardigan not to impress, but to project an unwavering dignity. Genevieve Hartley. I rehearsed in my mind, not the parasite she labeled me. The law office, a solid red brick structure downtown, loomed before me. The clock on my dashboard read 1:45. I sat, drawing deep, measured breaths, until a silver BMW glided into the parking lot. Brianna, a vision in a fitted black dress, her blonde hair sculpted into perfect curls, emerged with an arrogant grace. Beside her, her brother Trent, sharp in a crisp suit. I stepped out. Brianna's eyes fleetingly met mine, a flicker of surprise, then hardening into granite. She turned away, a deliberate snub. Trent leaned in, a low murmur exchanged, and then they vanished into the building. I followed, head held high, knuckles white on my purse strap. The receptionist smiled, a balm in the charged atmosphere, and led us to a plush, carpeted waiting room. The silence was thick, broken only by the methodical tick-tock of a grandfather clock. Brianna sat opposite me, legs crossed, her manicured hands clenched on a designer bag. Each time her gaze sliced my way, it felt like a physical blow. I held her stare, even offering a faint, almost imperceptible smile. It only tightened the viper's coil of her anger. At precisely 2 p.m., the door swung open, and Harold Pierce appeared. He was a man in his 60s, tall and lean, with a shock of silver hair and kind eyes that crinkled behind silver-rimmed glasses. His voice, low and steady, filled the room. Thank you all for coming. I know this is a difficult time, but Nathan left very specific wishes. I will read the will exactly as written. We moved into his office, a spacious room dominated by a gleaming mahogany desk and shelves groaning under the weight of meticulously organized files. I sat, every muscle tense, across from Brianna and Trent. Harold began to read. The initial clauses were predictable: house, car, retirement accounts, life insurance, all bequeathed to Brianna. She nodded repeatedly, a thin, smug smile curving her lips. With each mention of assets left to the wife, she shot me a challenging glance. See? You're nothing. I remained impassive, hands folded in my lap, waiting. The real surprise hadn't arrived yet. Then Harold paused. His tone deepened, slowed. However, 3 months before his passing, Nathan added an addendum to the will. I will read it word for word. The air in the room palpably shifted. Brianna's nodding ceased, her spine stiffening as she leaned forward, eyes riveted on the papers. Trent lowered his pen, a sudden stillness in his posture. My breath caught in my throat. Harold continued, his voice clear and resonant. I, Nathan Hartley, leave the entire contents of Safe Deposit Box K412 at First National Bank, along with all related documents and accounts inside, to my mother, Genevieve Hartley, for full and exclusive ownership. A dead silence descended, absolute save for the frantic beat of my own heart. Brianna's hand slammed onto the desk. What? No way! Nathan never mentioned any safe deposit box. Mr. Harold looked up, his gaze calm. Ma'am, I personally witnessed him sign this addendum. He was fully competent. I have medical verification attached. There is nothing improper here. Trent cut in, his voice tight with suppressed fury. "We demand verification. This could be forged." The attorney didn't flinch. "You are entitled to request it. But remember, this document is lawful and already filed with the county court. If you wish to contest it, the process will be lengthy and the outcome uncertain. I advise respecting the decedent's wishes." Brianna's face blazed crimson. She bit her lip, a tremor shaking her hand, despite her efforts to maintain composure. Her eyes, burning with accusation, swung to me. "You knew about this, didn't you? You put Nathan up to it." I shook my head slowly, deliberately. "No, I'm as surprised as you are. Nathan never told me about a safe deposit box, but perhaps my son knew better than anyone that his mother needed protection." Brianna let out a short, brittle laugh. Trent placed a hand on her shoulder, whispered something, and both fell silent, though their anger still radiated like heat. Harold retrieved a sealed envelope and handed it to me. "Mrs. Hartley, these are the box key and the authorization. The bank will proceed once they have the death certificate. You have full access to the contents." I took it, the weight of it surprisingly heavy, yet warm against my fingers. "Oh, Nathan," I thought, a silent message to my son. "I understand now. You never abandoned me." Brianna's gaze was fixed on the envelope, a hungry, desperate look, as if she might snatch it from my grasp. I saw fear in her eyes now, starker than anger. Perhaps she sensed the box held more than mere money. Perhaps instinct, a primal recognition of Nathan's true understanding of her nature, now sent a cold spike of panic through her. The meeting concluded, taut as a drawn wire. Brianna shot to her feet, her chair scraping back with a jarring bang. She yanked Trent's arm and stormed towards the door. But before she left, she whirled around, locking her furious gaze with mine. Each word was clipped, precise, venomous. "Don't think you've won. I won't let this go." The door slammed shut, leaving only Harold and me in the sudden quiet. He offered a faint, knowing smile. "Mrs. Genevieve, your son was very thorough. He planned for every scenario. Trust that he wanted you protected." I nodded, a constriction in my throat. Tears welled, but they were not tears of despair. These were tears of nascent strength, of a fragile, burgeoning hope. Stepping out, I entered the chill of the late afternoon. The wind tugged at my cardigan as I clutched the envelope to my chest, walking slowly, deliberately. People streamed past, traffic roared, yet I felt a profound, unexpected comfort. In this ocean of loss, I still possessed something precious, my son's quiet, fierce protection. It was a flame, guiding me through the inevitable aftershocks of Brianna's wrath. This, I knew, was only the beginning. A small bomb had detonated, and the tremors would last. But I was no longer the compliant mother. I had evidence, a silver key, and most importantly, a reason to fight. Nathan, my son, had gifted me that faith, and I swore I wouldn't waste it. 3 days after the will reading, on a bitter April morning under a slate-gray sky, I stood before the First National Bank. The wind was damp and gusty, whipping strands of hair around my face. I wore a heavy dark brown coat, the envelope and the silver key from Mr. Harold Pierce clutched tightly in my gloved hand. My heart hammered, not from fear, but a thrilling anticipation, because I knew the truth Nathan had carefully prepared for me lay beyond that imposing steel door. The bank buzzed with activity, heels clicking on the polished marble. I approached the desk, presenting my documents. The banker, a middle-aged woman named Peterson, looked up, her expression softening with a kind sympathy. "Are you Mrs. Genevieve Hartley? We were expecting you. Please follow me." I nodded, trailing her through a series of security doors. We stopped before a thick gray door with an electronic lock. Miss Peterson scanned her card, then used a master key. My hands trembled slightly as I withdrew my own silver key and turned the second lock. A quiet click, and the door swung inward. We stepped into a large fluorescent-lit room. Box K412 sat on the third rack, long and heavy. It took both hands to pull it out. As the cold metal box settled onto the table, I hesitated. Miss Peterson offered a small, reassuring smile. "Take as much time as you need. I'll wait outside." The door closed, leaving me utterly alone with the box. I took a deep breath, fighting the sudden surge of emotion, and turned the key. Inside, the first thing my gaze fell upon was a plain brown envelope, simply labeled "For Mom." My hands shook as I opened it. Nathan's voice, clear and loving, seemed to echo in my mind as I read, "Mom, if you're holding this, the thing I feared has happened. I'm sorry I can't protect you by being there, but I've prepared so you'll never be abandoned. You deserve a peaceful life. No one has the right to throw you out on the street." Tears welled, blurring the words, but I wiped them away quickly. I couldn't bear to miss a single one. Beneath the letter lay a thick stack of meticulously organized documents, bank statements, investment agreements, stock sheets. It took a few stunned seconds for the numbers to register. Nearly $200,000, all in my name. Nathan had taken the $40,000 I'd given him years ago, invested it wisely, and turned it into this. And there was more. In the corner sat a separate file, marked in stark red. Documentation. I opened it, a sharp gasp catching in my throat. Inside were printed emails, text messages, even screenshots. The first line hit me like a physical blow. "She just needs to hurry up and die and leave the pension. I'll find a legal way to get it." The text, from Brianna's number to Trent, dated over a year ago. I trembled, but kept reading. Page after page revealed Brianna's chilling machinations, discussions of manipulating Nathan, making him believe I was a burden, pushing me to pay more, even as his own salary covered the mortgage. There were receipts for luxury purchases made on days she claimed she couldn't afford groceries. Each page twisted in my gut, a slow burn of pain curdling into bitter anger. Nathan had known. He had seen it all, and quietly, patiently, he had gathered proof so that one day I could protect myself. At the very bottom lay an old family photograph. Nathan and I on his college graduation day, his face alight with pride. On the back, in his familiar hand, he had written, "Mom, you're the reason I got here. Never forget that." I pressed the photo to my chest, a choked sob escaping me. For years, I'd believed my son had been slowly pulled away by his wife's insidious control. But deep down, Nathan had always stood with me. He was simply preparing for the worst. Leaving the bank, my purse felt heavy with the envelope and files, yet I carried them with a strange, empowering lightness. Miss Peterson walked me out, her eyes gentle. "Mrs. Hartley, I met Nathan a few times when he came in. He was a good man. He never stopped talking about you, you know. I truly believe he loved you more than you'll ever comprehend." My eyes were hot, slick with unshed tears, as I managed a choked "thank you." Outside the lawyer's office, the midday sun slapped my face, making me squint, but a strange warmth settled deep in my chest, a counterpoint to the sharp, cold wind. The drive back to the motel felt endless, a blur of sun-drenched asphalt, until my phone shattered the quiet. Brianna. For a heartbeat, I considered letting it ring, letting her syrupy voice disappear into the ether. But I answered, "Genevieve, darling, are you busy today?" Her voice dripped with manufactured sweetness. "I think maybe we should sit down and talk about everything. I don't want the family to fall apart, you know. I'm making roast chicken your favorite." My knuckles blanched white on the steering wheel. A thin, grim smile touched my lips. Sure, Brianna, I'll be there. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me, this wasn't an olive branch. She'd heard about the safe deposit box. Now she wanted to claw out whatever Nathan had left behind. But this time I wasn't coming empty-handed. I had truth, evidence, money, and the quiet, unwavering protection of my son. This meeting would be our first true confrontation since the will reading. This time, I wouldn't just defend. I'd test her, show her I was no longer the compliant, grieving mother-in-law. Sunlight splintered through the windshield as I drove, my lips pressed into a thin line. Thank you, son, I whispered inside the quiet confines of the car. I found my weapon, and I'll use it at the right moment, so you can rest, and the truth can finally see daylight. 3 days later, the lunch date with Brianna dawned clear, the sun so bright it burned through my windshield, forcing me to yank down the visor. My old car hummed, a low counterpoint to the roiling emotions inside me. From the moment I'd left the bank, I'd known her invitation was a trap, but this time I was ready. Brianna's house, nestled on a quiet suburban street, still held echoes of the 2 years I'd lived there. Yet, approaching it now, it felt unsettlingly alien. As I parked, the front door swung open. Brianna stood silhouetted against the welcoming interior, dressed in pristine white. A warm smile plastered across her face as if nothing had ever marred our fragile family peace. Genevieve, you're here. I'm really glad, she chirped, her voice honey, her eyes ice. I gave a slight nod, clutching a small, carefully wrapped gift bag. Inside rested a framed photo of Nathan on his graduation day, a picture I was certain Brianna had never seen, captured long before she'd entered my son's life. I hesitated on the threshold. The dining room gleamed, a stage set for a performance. A crisp white cloth veiled the table, red roses bloomed in a neat vase, and delicate gold-rimmed china awaited. Roast chicken, a vibrant salad, a bottle of white wine, every element perfectly placed. Please sit, Mom, Brianna gestured, pulling out a chair with the practiced grace of a devoted daughter-in-law. Had I not known the predator beneath the veneer, I might have believed she truly sought reconciliation. I placed the gift bag on the table and offered a tight smile. I brought you something small. Thought you should have it. Brianna tore the paper with a practiced efficiency. As Nathan's radiant, proud face from his graduation day emerged, a flicker, a softening crossed her features, startlingly brief. Then the fake smile snapped back into place. Beautiful picture. Thank you, Mom, she said, setting the frame aside. I noted the dismissive way she handled it, as if it were just another disposable prop in her elaborate charade. We sat. Brianna poured wine, handing me a glass. To Nathan, she said, her voice weighted with artificial emotion. I clinked lightly, taking a small, almost imperceptible sip. Stay calm. I coached myself. Observe. Don't rush. Lunch unfolded in a haze of small talk. Brianna prattled about needing house repairs, the rising cost of living. I knew she was laying the groundwork, preparing her grand reveal. I remained quiet, letting her weave her sugary, deceitful web. Finally, after a few overly saccharine anecdotes, Brianna set down her utensils, propped her chin on her hand, a smirk playing on her lips. Genevieve, I know you went to the bank. I'm not stupid. So, what exactly did you find in the box? I looked up, feigning mild surprise. Oh, nothing much. Just a few old photos, some keepsakes. Nathan was sentimental like that. Brianna's eyes narrowed, a flash of suspicion igniting their depths. Then a thin smile. Really? I think there must be something more valuable. Nathan wouldn't keep a whole safe deposit box for a few pictures. I shrugged, cultivating an air of indifference. Meanwhile, my hand brushed subtly against the table, placing a black pen next to my water glass. It wasn't just a pen. It was the mini recorder I'd purchased after the first time her cruel words had pierced me. A light press on the top, and our entire conversation would be captured. I had just pressed it. Brianna poured herself more wine, took a long swallow, then lowered her voice, conspiratorial. Genevieve, we're both adults. I'll be blunt. If you cooperate, I'll give you a cut. We both know Nathan left something, and it's better for everyone if we make a private deal. You'll have money to rent a place, and I won't have to drag this into court. Win-win. I sat perfectly still, staring into those glossy, calculating eyes. For a fleeting moment, the true face of the woman I knew peeked out from beneath the carefully applied makeup. Her offer wasn't just greed, it was open contempt. I nodded slightly, faking a shaky uncertainty. You really believe Nathan would want me to hide what he left? Brianna pounced. Don't bring up Nathan. He's dead. We have to be practical. If you're smart, you'll work with me. If not, you'll get nothing but a few meaningless photos. I bit my lip, bending to retrieve my napkin, concealing a bitter smile. In my pocket, the pen buzzed silently, recording every word. If you cooperate, I'll give you a cut. The noose tightening around Brianna's neck. Lunch dragged on, a quiet tension humming beneath the surface. Brianna continued to paint her vision of mutual cooperation, and I nodded, letting her talk, occasionally tossing in a clueless remark, playing the easily manipulated, out-of-touch mother-in-law. The more she believed she was winning, the more she'd reveal. When the meal finally ended, Brianna walked me to the door, her smile unwavering. I hope you'll think this over seriously. I don't want tension with you. Family needs to stick together. I met her gaze, gripping her hand just a fraction too tightly. Exactly. Family needs to stick together. And don't worry, Brianna. I won't forget what you said today. I turned and left, the weight of the pen recorder a reassuring presence in my pocket. In my mind, Brianna's syrupy, calculating voice echoed, If you cooperate, I'll give you a cut. Another piece of evidence, another piece in the quiet picture I was meticulously assembling. Stepping into the sunlight, a fresh breeze brushed my cheek. I took a deep, fortifying breath. With every step, I no longer felt alone. I had Nathan behind me, the truth in hand, and bit by bit, I was turning the tables. After that staged lunch, I didn't immediately distance myself. To corner her, I knew I needed one more face-to-face, one sharp blow to shatter the mask completely. 3 days later, Brianna called. Genevieve, could you stop by the house? I want to show you some papers Nathan left. Maybe we'll understand each other better. Her voice still sugared, but I detected the faint metallic tang of a new scheme. I agreed instantly. I had my own plan. Brianna's living room gleamed, the leather sofas polished, fresh flowers artfully arranged. She wore a striking red dress, her makeup precisely applied, as if preparing for a high-stakes negotiation. I sat, placing my purse beside me, hands folded, expression calm. Thank you for coming, Brianna began, a half-smile hovering on her lips. I think we need transparency to avoid misunderstandings. I genuinely don't want family tension. I allowed a beat of silence, then pulled a printed screenshot from my pocket. I slid it gently across the polished surface of the table. Brianna's eyes shifted from curious to stunned as they fixated on the stark, damning words. Parasite, if Nathan dies, I'm turning her room into a home gym like I promised. The text was clear, sent from her phone to a contact named Trent. Her face drained of color. Her lips quivered. This isn't mine. Someone faked it. A faint smirk touched my lips. My tone remained even, flat. Really? Because I have the originals, saved on a drive. Nathan kept timestamps, phone numbers, images. Who do you think a court will believe, Brianna? An elderly mother with no reason to fabricate, or a widow with plenty of motive and material gain? The air in the room grew heavy, suffocating. Brianna's hand trembled as she reached to snatch the page, but I pulled it back, holding her gaze. And there's more. I produced a thick, clipped stack of papers, dropping them on the table with a thud that made her flinch. I'd planned to hold these back, but perhaps you need a reminder. These are your credit card statements. $15,000. Spent the month Nathan died. High-end spa, New York hotel, designer clothes. And here, I flipped pages pointing to a line, is the day you asked me to help cook for the funeral reception. The same day your card ran nearly $3,000 for a dress. This is what you call financial hardship? Brianna froze. Her eyes widened, lips shaking, but no sound escaped. I leaned back, my voice low but sharp, each word a scalpel. Nathan saw it all. My son didn't say much, but he quietly kept records. Every bill, every text, every snide remark you made behind my back. And now, it's all here. Brianna clutched at her chest, her face ashen, as if her mask had been violently ripped away. She stammered, Genevieve, I was overwhelmed. I needed to blow off steam. I let out a dry, mirthless laugh. Blow off steam? With Nathan's money? With lies? By turning a grieving mother into a joke among your friends? My voice remained even, but each word resonated like a hammer blow, driving her deeper into her spiraling panic. Her fingers dug into her palms. I could see her unraveling, just as I intended. I leaned in closer, my voice a silken whisper. The most interesting part? I still haven't shown you the heaviest evidence. What you've seen is only the surface. Nathan left plenty more, enough to shred your reputation if I choose. But I'm not rushing. I want you to sit with this, understand the precipice you're standing on. The silence was absolute, broken only by the steady tick of a clock on the wall. Brianna looked up, fear and hatred warring in her eyes. But I was no longer shaking. I had come too far to back down. I rose, straightening my coat. My voice was calm, utterly devoid of emotion. Thanks for lunch the other day, Brianna, and thank you for proving Nathan was right to believe his mother needed to prepare. I paused at the door, turning back just slightly. Remember this, Brianna. I haven't made any of this public yet, but if you keep thinking about tossing me out, these papers will speak for me. My voice was a low hum against the sudden hush of the room. I gathered the folder, its contents now a silent weapon in my bag, and walked to the door. Just before I closed it, I turned back. And remember, Brianna, everything you said yesterday and today, it didn't disappear. It's in my hands. You decide how you want to be remembered. The door clicked shut, leaving her slumped in the opulent living room, face ashen beneath the crystal chandelier. Outside, the cold air bit, sharp and clean. Each breath was a small victory. The documents in my purse felt heavy, a living proof nestled against my hip. I knew the fight wasn't over, not by a long shot, but with each deliberate step down the manicured flagstones, I could feel the script flipping. Most of all, for the first time in years, the gnawing anxiety in my gut subsided. I wasn't just cornered, I was fighting back. A week later, a thick cream envelope appeared in my rented mailbox. Inside, a gilded invitation from Brianna. A gathering to honor Nathan, she called it. Just a small, intimate get-together for family and close friends. I held the card, a chill tracing its elegant script. The same woman who had coldly plotted my eviction mere days after Nathan's funeral now wanted a memorial party. This wasn't about Nathan. This was Brianna's stage, an elaborate charade to keep spinning her narrative as the grieving perfect widow. I would go, but not empty-handed. In my purse, the documents and the pen recorder Nathan's quiet legacy. His final weapons were ready. Her carefully constructed stage would be the perfect place for her mask to finally shatter. That evening, I arrived early. The house glowed with an almost theatrical brilliance. White roses lined the walkway, their petals impossibly perfect, and inside, the living room swam in the cloying sweetness of scented candles. On a long lace-covered table, an array of framed photographs of Nathan had been artfully arranged. Wedding shots, sun-drenched vacations, their manufactured smiles, all chosen by Brianna. Not a single image of Nathan with me, his mother, graced the display. Guests began to trickle in, a murmuring tide. I found a quiet corner, a shadow among the light, and watched. Brianna, a vision in a long black gown, her hair pulled back in a sleek chignon, her makeup flawless, floated through the room. She held a wine glass like a scepter, a practiced tremolo in her voice as she worked the room. "Life is so empty without Nathan," she'd sigh, eyes welling on cue. "He was my whole world." Family members nodded, some dabbing their eyes, others offering comfort to her trembling hand. I remained silent, a ghost at the feast, but my heartbeat steadied, a slow, deliberate drum anticipating the perfect moment. Midway through, Brianna moved to the center of the room. She raised her glass, her voice shaking with an exaggerated vulnerability. "Thank you all for being here to remember my husband. Nathan was a wonderful man, and I only hope to live in a way worthy of his love." A ripple of applause filled the room. A few relatives whispered praises of her strength. Such resilience. I shivered, but inside a fierce certainty bloomed. In seconds, that admiration would curdle into shock. I rose, my own voice even, cutting through the saccharine air. "Excuse me, I have something to share." All eyes, suddenly heavy, swung to me. Brianna stiffened, then forced a smile, her tone brimming with false generosity. "Oh, Genevieve, of course, you should say a few words. Everyone knows how much you loved Nathan." I walked slowly to the center, my hand finding the small, cool curve of the pen recorder, already switched on, in my pocket. I scanned the faces, then met Brianna's gaze. She offered a small, imperious nod, signaling me to proceed. I placed the pen on the table. A soft click echoed. Then Brianna's own voice, clear and cold, filled the room, nothing like the weeping woman before them. "She's just an extra expense. Once the funeral's done, I'm turning her room into a home gym. Don't worry, Nathan's too soft. He'll never push back." The room plunged into a sudden, suffocating silence. Relatives and friends froze, their smiles melting. A few mouths hung open. Others stared at Brianna as if seeing her for the first time. Whispers started, a venomous current. My God, she really said that during the funeral? While Genevieve was grieving her son? How heartless. I stood still, saying nothing more. Their faces, their shocked eyes, spoke louder than any accusation I could have made. Brianna's face flushed a violent crimson. Her lips trembled. She forced a hollow laugh, hands raised in a desperate surrender. This must be edited. Someone's trying to set me up. You have to believe me. I would never. But the family's eyes delivered the final crushing blow. An older aunt, her face etched with disapproval, stepped forward. Her voice was firm, unwavering. "Brianna, that's undeniably your voice. No one can fake that little bitter laugh. We heard it plain as day." A cousin shook his head, a heavy sigh escaping him. "I always thought you were cold, but Nathan deserved better." Brianna looked around, attempting another smile, but it shattered on her face. She reached for her wine glass, but her hand shook so violently. The ruby liquid sloshed onto the lace. I added no more harsh words. I simply looked at her for a long moment, allowing the truth to sink in, then turned to the family. I don't need to prove much. I just want everyone to know Nathan was never blind. He saw the truth, and he protected his mother in his own way. The room fell silent once more, but this time the quiet held a different weight. People no longer looked at Brianna with the same admiring pity. The praise had vanished, replaced by cold, scrutinizing stares. Brianna tried to stand tall, but I saw her shoulders tremble, her face drained of all color. She was lost inside her own performance before an audience that no longer believed. I went back to my seat, my hand resting on the purse, heavy with its concealed truths. I knew I still held heavier blows, but for now, this single strike was enough to peel back Brianna's perfect mask for all the family to see. That night, as I left the house, the whispers followed me into the cool air. Unbelievable. Someone like that had the nerve to fake crying. Now I understand why Nathan changed the will. I walked into the night wind, feeling lighter than I had in months. For the first time since my son's death, the crushing pain of his loss wasn't smothered by humiliation. Instead, I felt a quiet, burgeoning strength, the strength Nathan had left me so I could keep going, so the truth could finally be seen. After that evening, the entire family dynamic shifted. Relatives and friends regarded Brianna with a new caution, a lingering doubt in their eyes. I knew her mask had fallen, but a soul built on deceit wouldn't yield easily. And just as I suspected, 2 days later, on a drizzly evening, Brianna appeared at the door of my humble motel room. She wore a long coat, her hair wet and clinging to her cheeks, still attempting an air of polished defiance. When I opened the door, she swept in, settling onto the worn armchair as if she owned the place. Her eyes were tired, but her voice was a practiced honey sweet. "Genevieve, we need to talk. I don't want a war anymore. I know you have evidence. I won't deny it. But we all want peace. I'm proposing a deal." I looked at her, offering no immediate reply, and sat on the edge of the bed, waiting to see how this new act would unfold. Brianna leaned forward, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "Let's split what's in the box. Half and half. I don't need all of it. You keep your share, I keep mine. In return, you stay quiet. No more evidence. No making a scene with the family. Everything goes back to normal." "That's the only way we both win." Hearing her, I almost laughed. Normal? After everything? But I contained it, showing nothing. I simply nodded slightly, allowing my voice a deliberate tremor. "Maybe you're right. I'm exhausted. But how do I know you'll keep your word?" Right then, I pulled a neat stack of papers from the bedside drawer. On top, the words, "Investment Cooperation Agreement," stood out in stark black type. I placed it on the small table and slid it toward Brianna. "I don't need much. We just signed this. Harold drafted it, so both sides commit. That way, no one can claim they were forced later." Brianna frowned, her eyes darting over the papers. I saw the suspicion war with her greed, and greed, as always, won. Her gaze skimmed the vague phrases: investment, cooperation, commitment to shared responsibility. No explicit claims, no messy admissions. She looked up, a bitter little smile twisting her lips. "You're not that naive after all. Fine, I'll sign. I want this over." Her hand shook as she held the pen, but she signed, her signature straight and bold. The moment the ink dried, I knew the game was over, because in that cooperation agreement, every line was a meticulously crafted trap, Harold, Nathan's sharp lawyer, had woven in legal clauses that made her admit to spending $15,000 from the life insurance on personal use, acknowledge her insults and humiliation toward me, and agree to withdraw any claims against Nathan's assets. It was a disguised confession, and Brianna had just signed it herself. I sat quietly for a few seconds, watching her carefully fold the papers as if she were securing her escape route. Then softly I said, "You know, Nathan always thought ahead. He planned for everything, and maybe today you proved he wasn't wrong." Brianna froze, her eyes widening, the realization dawning that she had been utterly cornered. But there was nothing she could do. It was all on paper, sealed with her own hand. She jumped up, her face white, her voice cracking. You tricked me," I answered calmly. "No, Brianna, your greed and contempt tricked you. I only handed you a pen. The rest you chose." Rain tapped a steady rhythm on the motel window pane. Brianna stood for a long moment, then spun and left, the door slamming shut behind her, leaving an oddly peaceful quiet. I stayed seated, running my palm over the freshly signed papers. Tears fell, but they were not tears of helplessness. They were the tears of a mother who had suffered loss and humiliation and had finally reclaimed her dignity. That night, I opened the window and let the night air stream in. I looked up at the murky sky and whispered, "Nathan, you did it. You're still protecting me, even when you're not here. And I promise, from now on, I'll live without bowing my head." I knew it wasn't entirely over with Brianna, but with her written confession and the evidence I held, she couldn't touch me anymore. The game was finished, and for the first time, I was the one who won the match. After the fateful night Brianna signed that paper, I knew a chapter had closed. But with someone who thrived on schemes, I couldn't afford carelessness. I needed a new start, a place where each morning didn't begin haunted by the memory of my former daughter-in-law's cold stare. I began searching for a home nothing grand, just a small apartment with enough light and quiet, a place where my footsteps wouldn't be treated like noise. I found it on the 3rd floor, a unit with wide windows overlooking the town park. Sunlight streamed into the living room, illuminating an old moss-green armchair. From there, every morning, I could watch other seniors walking their dogs, children playing, and feel, finally, like I belonged to a community once more. The moving truck rumbled away, leaving me in the hollow quiet of the new apartment. In my hands, a small box held the last vestiges of Nathan. His graduation photo, still smiling from the frame, now rested on the wooden shelf, a small beacon. Beside it, a lavender pot, plucked impulsively from the shop downstairs, exhaled a faint, calming scent. It wasn't much, but it warmed the bare room. "Nathan," I whispered, my voice a thin thread in the silence. "See? A new home. Not grand, but full of light. And this time, it's truly mine. No one can ever take it again." My first week melted into the rhythm of the neighborhood. I found the senior women's group at the church near the park. They knitted, they read, they shared fragments of lives lived. I listened, absorbing their kindness, until one day my own story, carefully edited, found its way out. Enough truth to sting, enough to warn. Don't keep your eyes shut when humiliation blinds you. Don't believe patience can soften a cruel heart. Though painful, my tale became a shield, a silent testament. Never let yourself be erased in the name of family. Then came Harold, Nathan's steadfast attorney, a man whose loyalty stretched beyond the grave. He arrived one afternoon, the air around him crackling with suppressed power. On my coffee table, he laid the original document, Brianna's signature stark against the crisp paper. "If she ever bothers you again," he said, his voice flat, resolute, "we have a weapon. This is airtight. Courts will shut her down." A tremor of relief, so profound it was almost a physical ache, ran through me. Weeks stretched, silent and unbroken. My phone remained quiet, a dormant sentinel. Brianna, the architect of so much pain, had vanished into the shadows, a ghost of her former self, lost in the credibility she'd burned. Yet, a thread of caution remained. One crisp morning, I sat at my small desk, the laptop a cool presence beneath my fingertips. I plugged in a new USB, watched the tiny light blink, and transferred everything. Recordings, screenshots of her venomous messages, credit card statements Harold had painstakingly sourced. The USB, sealed in a thick envelope, was mailed to a backup law office in Boston. Harold's trusted friend, my justice insurance. If anything were to happen, the truth would detonate. That evening, alone on my balcony, I watched the streetlights bloom like golden flowers among the trees. The city hummed, a gentle counterpoint to the quiet peace settling over me. No more fake sobs, no more whispered cruelties. Just the cool breeze, the scent of fresh-cut grass from the park, and the distant, bright laughter of children. I drew a long, shuddering breath, closed my eyes, and let my heart, battered but unbroken, finally rest. Nathan was gone, but what he'd left behind wasn't just money or legal papers. It was a fierce, abiding faith that justice, though it may crawl, does arrive. And as long as we stand our ground, holding on to our dignity, no one can turn us to dust. I poured a hot cup of tea, raising it like an invisible promise. From now on, I would live for me, not as a shadow, not as a burden, a free woman in a sunlit home, sustained by the quiet triumph of a just fight. Some mornings, I still wake in my little apartment, opening the window wide to let the sun flood the room. Nathan's framed photo, his gentle smile a constant, reminds me, Mom, you're never alone. I pour coffee, listen to the sparrows chirp, and finally, truly, breathe. Justice isn't always a gavel falling or a courtroom roar. Sometimes it's the quiet strength of evidence, a signature on a document, the unbreakable persistence of a heart that refused to shatter. I didn't need to humiliate Brianna publicly. I only needed her to fall into her own trap, and she did. I often wonder what Nathan would think. Perhaps he'd simply hold me tight and whisper, Mom, you're stronger than I ever knew. The ache of losing him will never entirely fade, but within that pain, I found an unyielding core. I stood up. I refused to let anyone define my worth. I stroll through the park now, sometimes chatting with the women from the group. They listen, wide-eyed, then nod. You did what many of us wouldn't dare. I don't see myself as a hero. I am a mother, a widow, an older woman who knows silence can be a more dangerous weapon than confrontation. Every night before bed, I still check the backup USB, the neatly stored files, a silent testament. I don't need to use them, but knowing they exist, knowing the truth is held steady, allows me to sleep. It's not just justice insurance. It's a reminder that truth, however fragile, is stronger than any lie. Writing this, I seek no pity. I want to leave a message to anyone who has felt belittled, trampled. Never let age or loneliness make you weak. Don't be afraid to stand. Sometimes a single piece of paper, a pen, a tiny recorder. That's all it takes to reclaim your life. I lost my son, but I didn't lose myself. And that's why I can sit here, telling you this with calm conviction. Justice always finds its way.